and welcome. Hope everyone is having a lovely time. I know most people are going to probably watch this after the fact, um, but that's fine. I'm going to try and finish the book because we only have 2 chapters left, and I've been putting it off for 3 weeks. I don't think anyone's going to be joining us since no one responded to me in chat and anything, so it's just going to be me reading again, which hopefully is just as delightful. I know it's not as funny, um, but yeah. So I'm just going to get right into it. So we are on chapter 6, and this one is titled Womanhood. It was the 5th of May. Alana awoke at dawn, ready for another session with Quorum's big sword. She got out of bed and gasped in horror to find her things and sheets smeared with blood. She washed herself in a panic and bundled the sheets down the privy. What's going on? She was bleeding and she had to see a healer. But who? She couldn't trust the palace healers. They were men, and the bleeding came from the secret place between her legs. Hunting frantically, she found some bandages and used it to stop the red flow. She shook her head. Her whole body was icy with fear. The servants would be coming to wake the pages soon. She had to do something in a hurry. She gnawed at her thumb until it bled. Quorum was on guard's duty. Besides, she couldn't tell him, and this wasn't something she could confide in the old soldier. She could trust only one person to help and keep quiet. Reading sucks. There was those who might wonder just how trustworthy the king of things could be, but Alana wasn't one of them. With no time to waste, she couldn't afford to sneak from the palace and run all the way to the city. She would have to ride and take the consequences. A quick word to Stefan and Moonlight was saddled. The holster even lured a guard away from one of the smaller gates. Alana rode out of the city at full gallop. Within minutes, she was ditching her mare to a post behind the dancing dove. Swiftly, she clambered into the kitchen roof and pried one of George's shutters open. George himself had taught her how to make a second-story entry. When Alana slid into the man's room, she was seized from behind, a very sharp knife pressed against her throat. "Didn't your mother ever teach you to enter by way of door?" a voice drawled softly. Alana held very still. The knife was no joke. "George, it's me, Alan." The man let go and made her face him. He wasn't dressed. He always slept bare. That's a weird thing to put. Just let the man wear pajamas. So it is. He put the knife on the table. He lit his smile. "And what makes a noble sprout break into a rogue's bedroom? I need your help." She twisted her hands together. "I need to see a healing woman right away." "A healing woman it is? As you might give me more than that, lad." George crossed his arms over his chest, waiting. He had always known there was a secret to Alan. Why a woman, and why a city healer? The best in the land or in the palace? Alana swallowed hard. "I'm not a boy." It was incredibly hard to say. "I'm a girl." You're a what?" George yelled. "Hush, I don't want everyone to hear." She scuffed her boot against the floor. I thought you'd guess. You have the gift. And your gift shields you. Alan, if this is a jest, it's in poor time for one. Goodness, I cannot read today. She glared at him. "Do you want me to take my clothes off?" "No, great Mithras, turn around whilst I get clothed." She obeyed, arguing. "That's silly. I've seen you naked before." George hunted for his breeches. "This is different, all right? Turn around. Why do you need a woman?" And she was pleading. "Don't ask. Please." The thief made a face. "Come on, then." And he hustled her down the back stairway into the street. "I know just the lady. She was a priestess in the temple of the mother here in the city before she married. Got trained there. She's my own mother." This contradicts something. George's mother was never married. Well, I mean, I guess George could be lying. He does that. She wouldn't talk if you pried her jaws apart. He spotted Moonlight practically waiting. You're little enough the mare will carry us both." He swung himself into the saddle behind Alana. "We're riding to the Street of the Willows." Alana nodded and urged her horse forward. George's warmth on her back was oddly comforting. "What's wrong?" he asked again. "If I knew, I wouldn't be so damn scared," she snapped. "That's true. I've never seen you overset," he said thoughtfully. We've got to talk, you and I." They turned down a small street lined with walled houses. George dismounted and unlocked the gate marked with a healer sign, a wooden cup circled once in red and once in brown. What are you called then? She hesitated. If I tell you, you might forget and let it slip. Not me, youngling. He motioned for Alana to ride it, or he motioned for Alana to ride in the courtyard and close the gate. And I let nothing slip. She dismounted, and Moonlight butted her affectionately. It's Alana, she whispered. George's mother came to the door of the house. She was a tall woman, with her son's twinkling hazel eyes and an air of command. Only a single streak of white in her chestnut hair revealed her to be a little more than middle-aged. A patient for you, mother, the thief announced. I'll be stable in the mare. Mr. Scooper showed Alana into a small, neat room. Healing plants of all kinds hung from the rafters, giving the room a fragrant smell. A small wooden table covered with clean sheets sat on the room center. Sit here, Mr. Scooper ordered. Now what's the problem? Alana explained quickly that she was female and not a male, and that she was a page in the palace. Mr. Scooper raised her eyebrows but said nothing. Alana drew a breath. Alana drew a breath and added, I'm bleeding. Bleeding, was the calm response. Where? Red with embarrassment, Alana pointed. George's mother began to smile. Has it happened before? Alana shook her head. Did you injure yourself there? No. When did it start? This morning? No pain? Too ashamed to speak, Alana either shook her head or nodded, depending on the question. There were others so personal that she wanted to hide when she thought about them. To her embarrassment, her embarrassment only tripled when Mr. Scooper began to laugh. You poor child, she chuckled. No one ever tell you of the woman's monthly cycle, the fertility cycle. Ugh, speaking hurts. Alana stared. Maud had mentioned something once. That's what this is. It's normal. It's normal. The woman nodded. Yes, I know how to read. I just totally botched that, I think, because that's Alana speaking at first. That's what this is? It's normal. Well, the woman nodded. It happens to all of us. We can't bear children until it begins. How long do I have to put up with this? Alana gritted. Until you're too old to bear children. It's as normal as the full moon is. Happens just as often. You may as well get used to it. No, Alana cried, jumping to her feet. I won't let it. Again, Mr. Scooper raised her eyebrows. You're a female child, no matter what clothing you wear, or you must be accustomed to that. Why? Alana demanded. I have the gift. I'll change it all. Nonsense, said the woman. Nonsense, the woman snapped. You cannot use your gift to change what the gods have willed for you, and you'd be foolish to try. I mean, no. You can do what you want. I've lost my place. The gods will you to be female and small and redheaded and obviously silly as well. I will also say, with this, Alana totally straight up, I think, fights a god at one point. So Alana can do what she wants. So, I don't think the gods could stop her. I am not silly, Alana wailed. She rubbed the back of her hand against burning eyes. She knew Mr. Scooper was right. She had tried to use her gift once to make herself grow, and her head had ached for days. Well then, perhaps not silly. A comforting hand laid on Alana's shoulder. Listen to me. Your place in life, you can always change, whether you have the gift or not. But you cannot change what the gods have made for you. The sooner you accept it, the happier it will be. I will reiterate, Alana will fight a god later on. Or, what's this? No. Yeah, what's essentially a god. So, this statement means nothing to me. Oh, where was I? She led Alana into the kitchen and put a tea kettle on the fire. You're not used to your body doing things that you haven't asked for it, are you? Alana made a face. It's bad enough that my chest keeps growing. Now something like this happens. She puts her head in her hands. Finally, she looked up and said, What do I have to know about this thing? Your cycle comes once a month and lasts 5 days or so. Bathe each day, bandage yourself, of course. The cycle will not come if you lie with the man and he gets you with child. The woman made a cup of tea and handed it to the girl. Here, this will make you feel better. Sipping it did make Alana feel calmer. Will it slow me down? Not so long as you stay out of men's beds. A babe will certainly slow you down. Alana shook her head. I don't plan on children. Many girls don't. Mr. Cooper poured herself some tea. But you know what happens when you lie with a man. Alana blushed. Of course. The woman smiled. And then you know it's the man's side of it. Well, you know the man's side of it, I see. Well, a woman enjoys it too. It's just one time is enough for you to get with child. She looked at Alana carefully. I'll give you a charm against getting pregnant then. If you change your mind, you can throw it away. Pigs might fly, the girl muttered. The look in Mr. Cooper's eyes was skeptical. We'll see. Now, George will have a few questions. Shall I bring him in? It's best he knows all. Alana nodded. The woman opened the kitchen door, calling, Stop listening at keyholes, my son. Which is very rude, George. Don't do that. George walked in and lounged against the kitchen and table, looking anxiously at Alana. All's well, then. She'll be fine, his mother replied. Tea? Is that calming tea of yours? Gods knows I needed the youngling truth now. Alana told him everything. Can't stop now, she finished. I didn't ask to be born a girl. It's not fair. George waved an impatient hand. Hush your nonsense. Being a girl hasn't slowed you down yet. And surely you don't plan on staying pretty young man after all your life. No, of course not. I'll tell them the truth when I'm 18 and I have my shield. She sighed. If they hate me, well, I'll prove that I can be a knight, won't I? I'll go into the world and have adventures. They don't need to see me again. George raised his eyebrows. I haven't heard such foolishness in all my life. You're telling us that John will hit you, Gary, Raoul, or your friend Sir Miles? My ears are deceiving me. But I'm a girl, she cries. I'm lying to them. I'm doing men's things. And you do them better than most men, George replied firmly. Hush yourself. Oh, think of them hating you if it comes to be. And don't worry, your secret is safe with us. He hugged her around the shoulders. Alana rested her head against his chest, her eyes filling with tears of gratitude. She blinked them away and whispered, Thank you, George. I'm calling you Alana when we're alone, he said. I think you should be reminded of who you are. Alana remembered that her monthly cycle and said, Fat chance I have of forgetting. Mistress Cooper chuckled, guessing at what prompted Alana's remark. Alana shrugged. I suppose you insist. I do, was the calm reply. Just don't let it slip. I've come too far now. Oh, he doesn't forget details, Mr. Cooper said dryly. He must get that from his father, for he never had it from me. She went to the room where she had first taken to Alana. Or taken Alana to. I know how to read. Have I mentioned that I'm not very good at it? George chuckled. George chucked Alana under the chin. That doesn't make sense. I'll enjoy watching you grow up, lass. Count on me to help. Alana gripped his hand, meeting his eyes. I never thought for a second that I couldn't. Also, I would like to reiterate, I'm pretty sure George has lied about his age, and he's not that much older than Alana. He's what, I think they said 17? I think his age is 17, but he might be younger than that. But even so, he's not so much older than Alana that watching you grow up makes sense. I think he's just being a dick. But, that's kind of how he is, so. I've also lost my place again, because every time I look up from my book, I lose my place. Okay, you're probably the only person in the city besides me who can say that, George's mother commented, returning. He's a good boy, even if he is crooked. Here, slip this on. Alana looked puzzlingly at the gold symbol dangling from the thin cord. She'd never seen such a letter before, but she could feel it radiating power. Quickly, she slipped the cord over her head, tucking it under her shirt. Feeling the strange magic vanished. Let George's people bring me to you from now on, Mr. Cooper instructed. I doubt you'll need me much, although, give me your hand. Alana obeyed. The woman touched her fingers and pulled away as if she had been burned. Now what? Alana wanted to know. Poor lass. There was pity on the woman's face. The goddess has her hands on you. You've been given a hard path to walk. She tried to smile. Luck to you, Alana of Trebond. You'll need it. Alana was slipping into her rooms when Quorum found her. 2 guesses who was waiting to see you. I couldn't help it. She made a face. I couldn't help it. The problem was urgent. Your problem now is urgent too, was the reply. The Duke is fit to be tried. For visiting the city without permission, Duke Gareth restricted London to the palace for 2 months. She also had to report to him during her time after the evening meal and run his errands. She took it without complaint, since she had no choice. She certainly couldn't tell a displeased Gareth why she had ridden off to the city. Her 13th birthday passed. It was August before she was free to leave the palace again. Even after she was taken off restriction, Alana remained on her best behavior. The Duke of Naxton had never been satisfied with her vague excuse for the morning ride to the city, and he watched her, so she watched herself. Duke Gareth was not the only one keeping an eye on her. Sir Miles still observed her at odd moments. Her friendship with the knight had deepened steadily until she was spending some nights playing chess with her older friend rather than enjoying the prince and his circle. For one thing, Miles told her fascinating stories. Miles could also explain why people behaved as they did. Although fighting was becoming second nature to her, Alana didn't understand people. Miles did. And she turned to him for instruction. They were playing chess one evening when Miles asked, "Have you ever seen my estates? They just lie off, they lie just off the great road north between here and Turbond." Alana frowned at the board. "I've never been anywhere except Turbond and Port Cayn. Caynn. Pretty sure that's Cayn. Miles raised his eyebrows. "You should see more of Tortal. Oh, did you know that I have ruins up in Barony Olu? O-L-A-U. Thank you, thing, for not even getting that. Thanks, captioning. Dating back to the old ones. The ruins, they date back to the old ones, yes. Alana was fired with curiosity. She knew little about the old ones, and they had sailed across the oceans to a civilization north of the inland sea. Bits and pieces were all that was left. Parchments that lasted centuries, mosaics showing white cities with high towers and ruins. The royal palace was built on the remains of one of their cities. Alana has always wanted to know more about these people who had come before her. "Are they good, your ruins?" she asked eagerly. Have you ever found anything there?" Miles' eyes danced with excitement. "They're large. I found a number of things there. Would you like to ride up with me and have a look? You're in check, by the way." I'd love to go. Do you think it's true that the gods were afraid of the old ones that would challenge them, so they rained fire on the eastern lands? There. She moved her king out of danger. She glanced at Miles in time to see an odd, thoughtful look on his face. I never knew you were so interested in the old ones, or the gods." Alana shrugged. "It's not something I talk about much. Duke Roger doesn't like to answer questions about the old ones or the gods." "Well, he says we aren't old enough to understand, but the others aren't very interested." "I don't think that's wise," Miles commented. "Our gods are much too busy in our lives for us to ignore them." He moved a piece, check, and mate. Alana was dressed for bed when Timian came for her. She changed back into her clothes rapidly and followed the serving man. "What have you done today?" Quorum called after her. "Why does the Duke want to see you this time?" "How should I know?" Alana said, turning to scowl at the soldier. "Maybe he likes my company." Instead of taking her to Duke Gareth's office near the king's council chambers, Timian took Alana to the Duke of Naxton's private study, his personal suite. Alana was shocked to find Duke Gareth wearing a bright... I'm going to pronounce it brocade. I know that's not how it's actually pronounced. I'm well aware of that. I just cannot think of how I'm supposed to pronounce it at the moment. But this thing picked it up as brocade, so maybe I'm correct in pronouncing it that. See, now I don't know. Anyway, a bright brocade dressing gown. I'll look up how to pronounce that later. No, I won't. I'll probably forget by the time we're done here. The tall man looked at her and sighed. "I suppose you know Sir Miles wants you to ride with him to Barony Alu. I'm going to keep calling it Barney Alu. And there's nothing you can do about it set up as Barney Elmo. Oh no. Alana gulped. He mentioned my visiting him, but I didn't think it'd be today or tomorrow, saving your grace's presence, sir. She twisted her hands nervously behind her back. The Duke smiled thinly. I'm not angry, if that's what's making you babble. I'm simply puzzled. I wasn't aware you two were close. Alana shifted her weight on her feet. We play chess sometimes, she admitted. I played on him at dinner. You gave me that duty, sir. So I did. And he knows things that I don't understand, and I can talk to him, sir. Alana blushed. I didn't mean to imply. The man actually grinned. Don't put your foot in it any more than you have, lad. I'm not here to be your nanny. Oh man, I can see the binding on my book. This thing's starting to get bad. Sorry, this book, I've had this book for over 10 years now. And it's starting to show the wearing on it really bad because it's my favorite book. I'm not here to be your nanny, and I'm not displeased to see that you and Miles are friends. It's good for you to have older man to talk to, if your own father had any. He stopped short. Alana was surprised to see him blush faintly. That was uncalled for. Forgive me, Ellen. I know nothing to forgive you for, sir, she said honestly. All right, then. And you better get some sleep. Miles plans an early start. I'll have Coram wake you. But you'd be gone for a week. I expect you to keep up with your studies, or I'll think twice about any other outings of the sort. Take a drink of water real quick if I can find my bottle. No, but I found one of the cats sitting next to me. All right. Okay, outings of the sort. Thank you, Your Grace. Alana bowed deeply and hurried from the ducal presence. She ran back to her rooms to find Coram waiting for her. She told him her news, hardly able to stand still from the excitement. And the Duke wears a red gold barricade dressing gown? Can you imagine? She asked as she disappeared behind the dressing screen. Coram chuckled. It's things like that remind me of who you are. Sometimes I forget you're not a lad. Alana, in her nightshirt, popped into bed as Coram doused the candles. Coram, she said she said when she had settled into... I've butchered the sentence 3 times now. I want to cry. Coram, she said as he had settled under his own blankets. Do you think anyone else has guessed that I'm not a boy? The man yawned. Unlikely. You've taken... I'm actually yawning myself now. Unlikely. You've taken too much care with your disguise. Now go to sleep. Or at least... Oh, goodness, sorry. Or at least let me get some. The dawn watch will be the death of me. Alana was up, dressed and packed when Coram came for her the next morning. He handed her a roll and a glass of milk. Drink any, he ordered her sternly. Did you get any sleep last night? She grinned sleeplessly. I don't think so. Well, behave yourself. Don't gulp that milk. He won't leave you behind. Coram was right. Miles was waiting for her in the courtyard dressed for riding. The very thought of Miles riding made Alana stare. Somehow, she had never envisioned the older man on a horse. When she scolded herself mentally, then she had scolded herself mentally, period. Miles had to pass all the tests she did. How could he have been knighted otherwise? I need to take it slower, or I'm just going to keep making weird run-on sentences that make no sense. Yawning a lot today. Goodness gracious. Alright, she enjoyed the day-long ride to Barney Alou. Miles had plenty of stories to tell, and it was nice to forget the palace discipline. The sun was beginning to sink in the west when they turned off the Great Road. Unlike Turband, Barney Alou was no fortress built to fight off mountains, bandits, and raiders from Skarna. Miles' home was set in a long valley and surrounded by acres covered with brown stubble. Towards the hills, Alana could see rows of trees. My people are farmers, Miles explained, seeing the direction of her gaze. Barney apples are the finest in Tortal. Well, if I do say so myself. It's a lot different from Turband, Alana replied. She stroked Moonlight's neck. for Moonlight's comfort or for her own, she wasn't sure. The rooms Miles gave her were small and comfortable. The floors were covered in bright rugs. A fire burned in the hearth, and the windows didn't let any draft chill in the air. Let any drafts chill in the air. Lana thought of her own home again and sighed. The servants were polite and well-spoken. When she explained her love of privacy to the man Miles sent to wait on her, he bowed deeply and replied, "As the young master wishes." She did not know the man went immediately to Miles and relayed her wishes, or that Miles was up very late thinking. Over breakfast the next day, Miles asked, "Are you up to the ruins? We'll have to go on foot. The ground there's too uneven for horses." She was more than eager to get started. After gulping her breakfast, Alana rushed to change clothes. She donned thick stockings and heavy breeches, a warm shirt, and a sturdy coat before pulling on her most comfortable boots. As an afterthought, she thrust a pair of gloves into her coat pocket. Alana did not like the cold, and the days were just turning crisp. When she joined Miles, she found he was dressed like she was. "No, Randolph," he said, telling his, oh god, they split it into two words. It says Major Domo. I think that's how I pronounce it, but they split it into two words here, and, like, my brain is not having fun with that. "No servants," he chuckled. I think you'd have trouble getting anyone to go with us." Randolph nodded. "You're right enough there, my lord. You will return before dark? I'll have even more trouble getting a search party out for you once the sun goes down." "Well before dark," the knight promised. "We're off then." Alana waited until they were away from the castle before asking, "Why don't your servants like the ruins?" "My people claim they're haunted," he said. "But I doubt it. I've explored them for years without seeing a single ghost." That's lame. I like ghosts. What was it? I was playing Luigi's Mansion earlier on over Discord with some friends. Like, I was streaming it to my Discord, and what was it I was saying? I was saying like man, I'd take the haunted house ghosts and all. That's the best part, or something like that. Like, free house in this economy. Oh. "Why explore them so much?" "I'm writing a paper about the place," was the reply. "I want to show how the house was laid out, who lived here, how they lived. I'm almost finished." He tugged his beard. "I doubt many will read it, but the work gives me satisfaction." Alana shook her head. She was no scholar. "Why bring me here?" she asked. As to change the subject. "Because I was compelled," Miles answered. She stopped dead. "You were what?" "I was compelled," he said patiently. "For 7 nights in a row I had the same dream. You and I were exploring the ruins, dressed exactly as we are now. When I asked Gareth to let you accompany me, the dream stopped." Oh, indeed. They started for it again. "I'm an everyday man. I like my books, and my brandy, and my friends. I like everything in its place. And I like to know where I'll be tomorrow. And when the gods brush my life, if they brush everyone's life at some point, and I get nervous. There's no accounting for what the gods want." The woods opened up, and Alana halted. The ruins lay before them. In some places the walls were taller than she was. They were built with marble and stone, and the stone gleamed as if it had been carved the day before. A gate made of heavy black wood dangled half off its bronze hinges. "Shall we go in?" Miles asked. He led the way through the gates. Alana stopped just inside. Where was I? I took a drink of water because I felt weird. Okay, there we go. Alana stopped just inside, scratching her itching nose and looking around. The remains of the stone walls stretched before them in neat rows. Former buildings and rooms inside buildings. Miles pointed his finger, describing a large area walled by stones. "I think this was the main house. See the door?" The knight tapped a slab of black wood leaning against the wall. It's 6 centuries old, at least. He moved ahead confidently. I believe this was the kitchen, he went on as Alana followed. When I was younger, I found cooking implements here. I'll show you them when we get back. What are they made of? Alana asked. Miles rubbed his nose. They look bronze or copper, but it polishes to a higher shine than new metal. I think it's coated. I think it's coating they were dipped in. I think it's the coating they were dipped in. Ugh. The old ones treated everything with it. Metal, wood, paper, anything that might show age. They were terrified of aging. Alana stared at him. Sir? No, lad, I didn't pull that out of thin air. Miles grinned. I can read their writings. From what I have read, they feared aging more than anything. I mean, some people now fear that too. I knew someone who told me that they were afraid of old people because they didn't like the idea of their own mortality. Alana began to explore, keeping a sharp eye on the ground. A glint at the edge of the marble block caught her attention. It was a spearhead. She rubbed it until it shone. Looking around, she saw brackets carved into the stone block lying nearby. No yawning until I start reading, and then my body's like, we're gonna continue to yawn. She saw brackets carved in stone blocks laying nearby. Those brackets would easily fit spears, swords, axes. Miles, she called. I think I found the armory. The man came over. I agree. And you've made another find. He examined the spearhead. I'm interested in cooking gear, not weapons. You'll probably find more of these. Because you're a sharp fellow, Alan. In the corner of the armory, Alana discovered a great piece of stone lying on the ground. Unlike the blocks that formed the wall, the slab was jet black. A metal handle was set on its side. Alana rubbed it with her shirt sleeve. What makes you say that? She asked, squinting at the edges of the slab. How many 13-year-old boys have come to a place like this and figured out where the armory was? She tugged at the handle. The stone didn't move. Miles, you seem to think I'm special. I'm not, really. Oh, Alana. Oh, Alana. She tugged again with both hands this time. It won't move, he said. My throat knows I tried often enough. I think it's just the armory door. Alana braced her feet firmly and gripped the handle. Maybe if you give me a hand, she muttered, tugging with all her strength. Miles was coming to help her when there was a groan of mechanics long unused. Alana jumped out of the way, and the great slab slid towards her. It uncovered a stairway leading down into darkness. Alana turned, sweaty and triumphant, to find Miles looking at her oddly. Drat it, Miles, I just put my back into it, she cried. Any other boys could have done it. I was 16 when I last tried to move that thing, he told her slowly. I had a friend with me and one of the local lads who's my servant. He's a blacksmith now, and he was no weakling back then. We couldn't budge it. Well, maybe there was dirt in the gears and the rain washed it away or something, she said crossly. She started down the steps. Aren't you coming? Don't be foolish, Alan, Miles cautious. We don't have a torch, and the tunnel could lead anywhere. You won't get far without a light. She grinned at him. Ah, but you forgot. I do have a light. She held up a hand, concentrating on her palm. Sweat formed on her upper lip as she felt the magic uncurl inside her. Something else uncurled in the tunnel, but she ignored it, for the heat building in her palm. She opened her eyes, and her hand, she opened her eyes. Her hand was glowing with bright violet shine. I don't know where I'm getting these extra words for. I really don't. Come on, she called, trotting off down the passage. Alan, I order you to come back here, Miles shouted. I'll be right back, she called. She could feel a strangeness around her. No, two strangeness. One frightened her. It was black and ghost-like, hovering just outside the light shed by her magic. The other called her with a high singing voice that she couldn't ignore if she wanted to. Her nose tickled, and she sneezed several times. The singing filled her mind and drowning out Miles' voice. Her light struck something that broke it into 100 bright fragments. She didn't notice the darkness closing in until behind her she picked up something that was glittering beautifully. It was a crystal attached to the hilt of a sword, long and light. The blade was encased in a battered dark sheath. Alana's hand trembled as she lifted it. Miles, she shouted, guess what I found? Get Back here, he yelled. She looked up, alarmed. There was fear in Miles' voice. A storm's coming up, and if it's natural, I'm a priest. Suddenly the light of Alana's magic went completely out. Darkness swirled around her in long tentacles that tightened on her body. She opened her mouth to scream for Miles, but no sound emerged. She fought to breathe and fought to throw her magic into the stifling blackness, but nothing happened. She tried to shove it away with her arms and legs and found the blackness had bound her tight. It was squeezing her ribs, forcing the air from her lungs. Alana gasped for breath. The darkness filled her mouth and nose. Brilliant lights burst in her head, and she struggled like a crazy person. Nothing affected the darkness. Her struggles got weaker and weaker. When she tried to fight even harder, but it was hopeless. She was dying, and she knew it. For the first time in her life, Alana stopped fighting. She had used up all her air, her strength, her magic. She was weaponless. The darkness was eating her brain. She was dying. With an inner sigh, almost one of relief, she accepted that fact. As her knees buckled, Alana took the knowledge of her own death and made it part of her. The crystal sword blazed as light penetrated the darkness in her brain. Suddenly, the fearful grip on her body and mind relaxed. She drew in a lungful of air, shocked to find that she still could. She opened her eyes and closed them, nearly blinded by the blazing crystal. Somewhere outside, Miles was calling for her, his voice nearly drowned out by the approaching thunder. Alana used the crystal's light to guide her back to the entrance of the tunnel, feeling the blackness in full retreat before her. Still shaky, she scrambled to the surface. As she entered the upper air, the crystal went dark once more. Alana glanced at the sky. Black clouds boiled overhead. Lightning was already striking a few leagues away. Miles seized her arm and pulled her from the tunnel entrance, just as the slab ground over it once more. Alana stared at it, wondering just what was going on. She'd accepted death. Why wasn't she dead? No time to ponder it, Miles yelled in her ear. Let's go. They headed to the castle at a run, Miles half carrying a bewildered Alana. The high winds whipped twigs and branches into their face, and within moments they were drenched by sudden onslaught of rain. Inside the castle, the Barney servants steered them to hot baths and dry clothes. Alana bathed and changed, still not believing she was alive, picked up the sword and went to find her friends. Miles was awaiting for her in his morning room. A room like this would never have been found in a fortress like Turbond. Huge windows overlooked the valley were too vulnerable to enemy archers. But here, at Peaceful Allu, Miles could see his fields, the distant village, even the great road on a clear day. Now he sat in a deep chair, watching the rain streaming down the glass. A steaming pitcher and 2 mugs were at his side. Have a toddy, he said, handing a filled mug to her. You look as if you need it. Alana stared at the steaming liquid, trying to remember just what she was supposed to do with it. Drink up, lad, Miles urged gently. He drained his own mug and refilled it, watching her. Alana sat carefully in a chair, staring out the window. Finally, she raised the mug to her lip and sipped. The hot liquid sent ripples of fire running through her. Perhaps she was alive, after all. She took another large large swallow and another. I thought I was dead, she said at last. I guess not. She handed him the sword. Here, I found this in the tunnel. Miles examined the sword carefully without taking it from the scabbard. He ran his fingers along the sheath, rubbed the metal fitting with his thumb, and squinted at the candle flame through the crystal. Through the crystal. There we go. What happened? He asked as he looked at the sword over. There we go. Alright. She told him in few words, watching every movement of his face. Is the crystal magic? He asked firmly. I don't know. My magic didn't make it work. It only came to life when I quit fighting to stay alive. I see, he muttered. You accepted death, and the stone saved your life. This didn't make sense to Alana, but she ignored it. Aren't you going to draw the blade? Miles looked out the window thoughtfully. Storm's letting up, he observed. Alana shifted impatiently in her her chair. Well, no, I'm not. You are. He held the sword out to her. I can't, she protested. They're your ruins. It belongs to you. Miles shook his head. You haven't been paying attention. I was compelled to bring you here. You opened a passage when I tried to do it for years and failed. Something happened down there, and the sword protected you. And you forgot the storm. Oh, and don't forget the storm. I really cannot read today. I can never read when I go to read this. Like, all my brain does is just like, words out loud, no thank you, and just stops functioning. I can take a hint, Alan. It belongs to you, she protested, almost tearfully. It never belonged to me, he thrusted at her. Let us see what she looks like, lad. Reluctantly, Alana stood and took the sword. The hilt fit her hand as if it was made for her. She closed her eyes and drew the sword. Nothing happened. She glanced at Miles, embarrassed. Her friend was grinning. I feel silly, she admitted. After what happened this morning, I was expecting something dramatic myself. Well, Alana hefted the blade. It was thinner than a broadsword and lighter, with a broadsword's double edge. The metal was lightweight with a silver sheen. She lightly touched a thumb to one edge and cut herself. Grinning with delight, she tried a few passes. It felt wonderful in her hand. What did you call her? Miles asked. She didn't question Miles calling the blade a her. Seeing how it brought such a reaction from what regards the ruins, the knight suggested. I guess that's what it is. Anyway, seeing how it brought on a storm all so fast, how about lightning? Miles raised his mug and toast. To Alan and lightning, may you never meet a better blade. Alana drained her own mug. Miles? She stammered, sliding the blade into to its sheath. The knight was not deceived by her innocent tone. I would rather nobody knew about, well, what happened. Could we just say I picked lightning from your inventory? You'll tell Jonathan, won't you? Oh, of course. But I don't want anyone else to know if that's all right with you. Certainly, lad. As you wish. Miles refilled his mug, wondering what or who Alana was afraid of. I don't know, I don't think that's really hard to guess, given that she does not like Roger. Granted, no one likes Roger, so... Alana expected people to notice lightning. She would have even been hurt. She would have been hurt if they hadn't. Even Duke Garth asked about it, as did Captain Askelaw. Not enough weight, the captain grunted when he first lifted it. When he tested the edge, the look on his face changed to one of respect. It'll do, he said finally. Alana had to be content with that. Everyone accepted the idea that lightning was a gift from Sir Miles, though Alana told Jonathan the truth privately. The prince was fascinated by her experience and asked a good many questions. He even tried his own magic on lightning, attempting to make the crystal glow. Nothing happened, and the prince finally gave up, saying the exercise was giving him a headache. Alana told Coram the truth as well. She felt she owed it to her old comrade. Coram said nothing, but he would have not. Coram said nothing, but he would not touch the sword either. When George asked to see Alana's new blade, she handed it over willingly. To his surprise, the thief yelped and dropped the weapon. He made her pick it up. It's filled with magic, and a kind I've never encountered, he said. You're telling me this was simply hanging in Sir Miles' armory? Alana opened her mouth wide and then closed it. When she spoke, it was the true story she gave. George heard her out, shaking his head in wonder. You accepted something, he remarked. You? I didn't have any choice, she snapped. I was going to die whether I wanted to or not. But when I stopped fighting it, when you accepted it... Will you stop dithering about accepting things, George? Anyway, it's when the crystal worked, and I haven't been able to make it work since. Well, I'm glad you escaped. And I'm gladder still that lightning is strapped to your waist. George nodded at the sword. A magic blade. Whether you can work magic or no, it may come in handy. Someone else noticed lightning was not all what it seemed. When Alana walked into her sorcery class for the first time after her return from Alu, Duke Roger smiled at her. I hear you have a new sword, young Alan. May I see it? Alana hesitated. She did not want to hand her sword over to Duke Roger. for and had no reason on earth for feeling that way. Reluctantly, she unclipped the sheath from the blade. I mean, he's kind of a shady bitch. Like, I know everyone else likes him, but, like, it's Gary who doesn't like him either. And other people are kind of wary of him, and he just kind of has this air about him where you're like, I don't trust that guy. So, you know, you have a reason. It's that this guy's shady as fuck. Oh. Reluctantly, she unclipped the sheath from her belt. She could feel Jonathan watching her suspiciously, wondering what was taking her so long. It's just a blade Sir Miles had around, she said. I don't think I've made a lifelong study of the art of swordsmithing, Roger told her, and he held out his hand. Let's see. Alana gave it to him, hating him more at that moment than she had ever hated anyone. Quickly she doused that emotion. Roger froze, his eyes going wide. His face turned pale, and the knuckles at the hand gripping lightning were white. Suddenly the air around him turned dark, shimmering blue. Instinctually, Alana stepped forward to snatch her sword away, but the color vanished as quickly as it appeared. Heard when the Duke carefully put the sword on the table. How did you get this? He looked up at her, his eyes commanding. Speak up. How did you get it? Alana turned red, her chin stuck forward dangerously. I got it from Sir Miles, she replied, fighting to hold her temper. I stayed with him last week. He gave it to me. He gave it to you, just like that. It was in his armory, sir. Alana could feel her shoulders getting stiff with anger. No one was using it, and he knew I didn't have a sword of my own. She reached over and picked up lightning. By your leave, your grace. She clipped the sword on her belt, buying her time to get her rage under control. I see. You're certain that's the way of it. You aren't withholding some insignificant detail, something you think might not interest me. This man's creepy. Roger's voice was quivering with what? Rage? Impatience? Fear? Alana wasn't sure. The Duke realized the boys of the class were staring at this break in his usual calm charm. He tried to smile. Forgive me if I may press you, Alan. Did you know this blade is magic? Alana looked up. Her face was innocent, wide-eyed and bland. Jonathan recognized the look Alana wore when he was about to tell one of his most outrageous lies. It was so obvious to John that there was something about lightning that had shaken his cousin Roger loose from his normal smiling self, and that Alan did not want to tell the truth about the sword. Keep it simple, the prince thought, as his red-headed friend thought to his red-headed friend, and he'll spot a lie if you make it fancy. Jonathan did not have to worry. Magic, your grace? Alana was saying. I just like the heft of it. It's lighter than most swords, but there's magic in your sword, Alan, the Duke interrupted impatiently. Alana hid a satisfied smile. Roger believed her. It's old magic, far older than anything you've encountered, probably. What would explain why you didn't realize immediately that the sword is unnatural? Can you make the crystal glow? Oh, no, don't look at me as if I were raving. Try to make the crystal glow. Alana made it look as if she was trying. She used her gift to bring sweat to her face and color to the air around her light violet. She would walk to Turband and back she'd walk to Turband and back before she'd really try to make the crystal work for Duke Roger. In any case, she hadn't been able to make it work before. This time would be no different. Very well, Roger said finally. Stop, you're only tiring yourself. The magic that could unleash the powers in the crystal and the sword is lost to us forever. Hello? Oh, hello, Cat. Chance has joined us once again. Hi, baby. I'm reading. I cannot pet you. I'm sorry. You're a sweet boy, though. Oh, you're gonna crawl onto my lap? Okay. Hi. Hi, baby. Hi, baby boy. I've lost my place now. 'Cause of course I have. Okay, I'm gonna read. You gonna enjoy the story with me? Oh, yeah. Hi, baby. Okay. It's lost to us forever. This is at least sounded honest, as did the discouragement in the sorcerer's voice. A shame. Does Sir Miles know how old the sword is, or that it's magical in nature? I don't know, Alana hedged. I think he does. He found it in some ruins near Barnay-Lou. He said the ruins belonged to the old ones. May I sit down now, sir? Roger stood, turning his jeweled rod in his fingers. Of course, I have delayed our lesson too long as it is. Take care of that blade, Alan. Only if it becomes if only because it's very old and very valuable. I'm certain Sir Miles, noted scholar he is, was aware of the value when he gave it to you. A mark of esteem from an established man. No, that's not established. Estimabl. I don't know why my brain cannot pronounce that right now, but it cannot. Estimatable? Yeah, estimatable. I'm gonna go with that. It's not picking up that word, but I don't know. Where was I? Where's that word? Where's that word that doesn't work for me? I have cat fur in my mouth. There it is. He stared off into the distance for a moment, and then faced his class. Today we'll begin the study of illusion. Before you can learn the practice of casting illusions, you must learn the theory behind making things seem as if they are. Theory behind making things seem to be what they are not. I don't know why I can't read today. Alana took her seat and watched the Duke of Kent recover his presence. He relaxed, and the atmosphere in the room relaxed. Once again, the boys were hanging on his words with obvious delight. Alana, however, was not listening. Instead, she fingered at the crystal at Lightning's hilt, thinking of what had just happened. The Duke felt something powerful in her sword. Moreover, he was afraid of Lightning's magic, and that was something to remember. Even more important, she realized, she didn't dislike the Duke of Kent. She hated him. She hated him with a deep, fiery energy that she had never known she had, and she didn't have the slightest idea why, other than the fact that this man is creepy as hell. One snowy night, Alana was leaving her special indoor practice court after an hour with Quorum's sword and an hour with Lightning, when she bumped into Stefan. Looking for ye, the holster muttered. He was nervous at being inside the palace. George sent this along. He thrust a water paper into her hand and rushed back to his beloved horses. A single sheet of paper with George's handwriting was folded around a sealed envelope. Alana hurried to her room and bolted the door. Sitting on her bed, she read George's note. Seems your brother took you at your word when you said he'd send letters through me. Here's one. G. Alana broke the seal on the letter with fingers that shook. Until now, the twins had only exchanged cautious notes, since Dick Gareth received all the page's mail. Tom was a poor letter writer in any case. This, however, was different. After learning Alana's true identity, George had offered to smuggle letters to and from the City of the Gods. This was the first totally honest chance to communicate with each other that the twins had in almost 3 years. Dearest Alan, Tom wrote, I'm in Mithra's cloisters now. Oh, at least I don't have to put up with all the giggling girls all the time. They made us shave our heads, but I suppose it'll grow back in time by the time I leave. We wear brown robes. Only initiates wear orange. I'm glad I've got someone safe to pass our letters through, even if you took your time about it. But I suppose they keep you busy. How's Coram? Is he happy with the palace guard? Maud comes by every 6 months or so to check on me. She acts as if she were a chicken, I were a duck that hatched by mistake. I have cat fur in my mouth still. Why? Why? Why do you cats just shed fur all the time? She says father is working on a paper tracking the Rykal? Rylkal document. I wish him luck. He should be busy with that for the next 10 years. Can we trust this man? We can trust this man, George, can't we? I ask because it's important. A certain noble sorcerer has been asking questions up here about me. I think you know who. The one who had such an interest in your lightning. Watch him. He has a reputation for slowing down, sometimes stopping, the careers of young sorcerers who may turn out to be as good as he is. It's a warped kind of compliment. You must have him worried enough that he had to check and see if your twin was like you. I think he's been thrown off by the track where it concerns me. I play it stupid here. It would help if you spread the word down there that your twin isn't too bright. I say I was dropped on the head or something when I was little. That's what my masters believe anyway. I know a lot more than they think I know. I practice at night when the others are asleep. Enough bragging. Your friend has secrets and has a reputation for being dangerous. Oh, there's another cat there. Hello. You blended into my blanket, sir. Felix is also here. Hi, baby. I laid back slightly, and all of a sudden there's a cat. Yes, hi. Oh, sweet boy. Where was I? Oh, okay. Enough bragging. Your friend has secrets and has a reputation for being dangerous. The masters here say that he's the best in the Eastern lands, and they ought to know. Here's a piece of the City of God's gossip that you better think over. We heard of the sweating sickness when it was over with, and you wrote some of the details. I wish I could have seen it. A fever caused by sorcery that drains and kills healers is magical working you hear of once in a lifetime. Everyone was, of course, naming all the living sorcerers who could be powerful enough to pull off such a thing. Only three names came up. Only three names came up much. Your smiling friend's name was one. True, you say he was in Karthak, but wouldn't a sorcerer powerful enough to strike an entire city with a sickness be powerful enough to do it from leagues and leagues away? And who is between him and the throne? I wouldn't want to be the prince, not with him as my only heir. Well, that's only a theory. Give me a few more years and we'll give your smiling friend a run for his money. Till then, speak softly to him and let him think you like him. There's no before in that sentence. Why am I reading a before? People who let it be known that they like him sometimes disappear, people who let it be known that they don't like him sometimes disappear or die of strange diseases. Wow, I really cannot read today. Oh my goodness. I've tried looking in on you or the fire, but you're shielded by forces I haven't encountered before. You aren't holding out on me, are you? Good luck to you. I expect we'll be hearing from each other much more often now. Take care and watch the nobleman I mentioned. Your loving brother, Tom. Alana read the letter 3 times and then burned it until only fine gray ash was left in the fireplace. Tom had given form to some of her worst suspicions. She wished she could discuss her feelings about Duke Roger with someone, but Jonathan and the boys worshipped him, and Alana didn't think she had anything substantial enough to confide to Miles. She sighed and added a log to the fire. Maybe she could say something to George. It was all too complicated for one page to figure out. As to being shielded by mysterious forces, Tom was being silly. As some say, the gods themselves were looking out for her. If Tom mentioned of a guarding forces... Oh God, why can I not read? If Tom's mention of guardian forces dovetailed with Mr. Scooper saying the goddess was interested in the things Alana did, or Quorum's theory about how the gods protect Alana through Duke Roger's questioning, well, that was all for Tom, Quorum, and Mr. Scooper to worry about. Alana herself had enough problems. Winter passed quietly. Alana occupied all her time with lessons, working every extra hour she had, so she could be as good as if not better than, the boys. Her lessons in sorcery went on week after week, with Duke Roger keeping a careful eye on his students' progress. He was very big on theory, she soon discovered, and would often spend several weeks on the ideas behind a spell before permitting them to try a spell in concrete form. It made for very slow study. Many of the spells Roger chose for them to learn were ones Alana had already learned from Maud. Keeping Tom's word in mind, she chose not to tell Roger she already knew these spells. Some of them in more advanced forms. Instead, she peeked ahead in the scrolls. Roger gave them to read and found herself looking at books of magic that she was supposed to leave alone. She suspected that Jonathan was deliberately locking himself in a secluded library at night and practicing more advanced spells from a reader not even the right name, from a reader Roger had forbidden them to touch. But Alana chose to say nothing, either to Roger or to Jonathan. What John did was his business after all. She herself never bothered to tell anyone where she disappeared to when she went to work with Quorum Sword in secret. One free morning, safe in George's rooms, Alana caught herself trying a spell for shielding. Wall of power that was in one of George's books. Okay. Shielding is not capitalized, but wall of power is capitalized, and that's what threw me off. And there's not a comma either. It's just shielding wall of power. But it would be a spell for shielding, comma, wall of power, right? I'm not crazy. That feels like a typo. Or maybe I'm just really tired. The moment she saw the wall of glittering purple fire grow up around her, she shouted, "So mote it be," and broke the spell. Gosh, what am I doing? She asked George in disgust. George took her hands in his big ones. "You're doing a smart thing. Oh, you'll be a great knight and rescue ladies and slay dragons alike, but not all the monsters you meet are dragon-shaped. Remember what your brother said about Jonathan's smiling cousin." Alana gave him a look for look. "Do you think there's a danger from Duke Roger?" George shrugged and released her hands. "I'm but a poor, uneducated city lad," he replied, his hazel eyes twinkling. "If only I know, I only know if someone hands me a weapon, any weapon, and I can use it, I will, and use it I will. And think on it, Alana. What's the line to the throne, with no children after Jonathan?" She counted on her fingers. "The king, the queen, Jonathan, and Duke Roger." She snapped her fingers in exasperation. "You and Tom are silly. If Duke Roger wants to be king so bad, and he's so all fired powerful. All fired powerful. I think I'm tired, because this is starting not to make sense to me. But, we're going to keep reading, and it's going to still sound terrible. But that's just how it is. That's just how we're letting life be right now. Oh, maybe it's a good thing there's not really many people watching it. The thing says 1 viewer. Hello. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry, I'm terrible at this. And he's so all-fired powerful, why doesn't he take the throne now? Because some powerful people surround it, lass, George replied. I'd not want to have Duke Gareth as my enemy, no, nor my Lord Province either. That quiet Sir Miles of yours bears some hard watching. And look at Jonathan's own friends, Gary, who's sharper than even his father was, Alex, who's a rare hand with a sword, you with your gift, and your brother in the city. He's going to wait, our smiling friend. George tossed an apple into the air and speared it with his dagger. He picked it up, tugged it off the blade, biting into it thoughtfully. He'll find out who stopped Jonathan dying during the sweat and sickness. He'll make friends and sow favors. He'll take King's people and make them his people. He'll get rid of some who would never come to him, and he'll strike. He pointed a dagger at her. So learn your spells, youngling. You'll need them before your life's out. Unless I'm mistaken, the Duke of Kent doesn't like you any more than you like him. Ugh. You feel something like tickling the back of my throat, and that's like very uncomfy when you're trying to read out loud. Ugh. While Alana mixed swordplay with spells, both where no one could watch her, Jonathan met with the people of his city. That winter he and Alana went down to the Dancing Dove whenever they could. Here, John was Johnny, a rich merchant's son George had taken a liking to. At the Dancing Dove, men didn't fall respectfully silent when Jonathan spoke. They were more likely to tell him, "You're but a lad, what do ye know? Hush and listen to your elders." Jonathan hushed and listened. He made friends with the most dangerous thieves and murderers in the eastern lands. He learned to pick pockets and throw dice with ease. He flirted with flower girls and watched as thieves divided their night's hauls. He was seeing life very differently from the way he'd seen it from the palace. He was so eager to learn all he could. Man, it sucks so badly that he falls so short on these lessons. Oh. Jonathan is not... He's not a bad person, but he is a stupid king. He's also a stupid person. Oh. Anyway, no one ever guessed that the heir to the throne was sitting there, sipping a tankard of ale and occasionally tossing a set of dice. Ah. Gary often went along, and Raoul eventually introduced George in his circle. Jonathan suggested Alex also be brought along, but that was the winter Duke Roger asked that Alex be his squire until Alex's deal of knighthood. Lana didn't even have to say that she wanted no one who was close to Roger to meet George. Alex was simply too busy to spare much time for his old friends. Winter melted into spring, and combat training among the squires reached a high level of activity. Since custom dictated that the heir take the ordeal if midwinter came between his 17th and 18th birthdays, it seemed likely that Jonathan would be needing a squire that year. And since they had reached their 18th birthdays, Gary, Raoul, and Alex would also be taking the ordeal of knighthood. All three were watching the squires and oldest pages trying to make a choice. Competition to be one of the favored four squires was fierce. Jonathan, of course, was the heir, and the other three came from the noblest families of Tortal. Everyone liked the big, somewhat shy Raoul. Shy? I don't think I'd describe his personality as shy. I don't think that's how I'd describe him. But okay. While Gary's sharp wit and sharper tongue led him to make enemies, he was also respected. Alex was Duke Roger's squire, and some of the Duke's popularity had rubbed off on him. The squires and the pages who would be made squires at midwinter were... Ugh, my throat feels sticky. Hold on. Okay, but midwinter worked relentlessly, particularly when one of the four was in sight. All that is, except Alana. Although she was to be made squire that midwinter, she did not consider herself to be in the running, and she said so. The other boys wanted to know why. "It's easy," she explained. "Look at me. I'm the shortest, skinniest boy in the palace. My wrestling is terrible, and I'm not that good of a swordsman. No one will want a weakling like me for a squire." "But you're best on horseback, especially since you got moonlight," Douglas protested. I love the squires so much, because Alana's over here like, no, I'm terrible at things, and just having imposter syndrome, and they're all like, "Man, shut up, you're the best of us." They're so lovely. I think the squire friend group is better friend group than the main friend group. You're the best at archery and tilting and staff fighting weapons, and you're a good student, and all the masters say so behind your back. Are you saying even Jonathan won't pick you?" Alana made a face. More than anything, she wanted to be Jonathan's squire. Most of all, there needs the best squire in the kingdom can supply. I just imagine the three other boys at that table just rolling their eyes, because they're like, "Alana, stop having imposter syndrome." Because that's what she has. Like, just straight up, like, I'm not good, I'm the worst all the time. It's like, no, honey. Honey, no. You have trauma. uh. Alright. My swordsmanship, ugh, I cannot say that word very well. It was too weak, and I'm too little. Joffrey of Merrin's good, and the prince should pick him. But that's what she told her friends. And she knew they didn't believe her, but she didn't care. The truth was, she didn't feel worthy of being someone's squire. She was a girl, and she was a liar. And at that moment, the truth could surface. In the meantime, the fact that she could always be beaten at wrestling, and that she was only an average swordsman would do. Jonathan would pick Geoffrey or Douglas, and that would be the end of it. In April, that changed. Lord Martin of Merrin, Joffrey's stern-faced father, rode north to visit. His son was to visit his son and request additional troops for his fief. Fief Merrin was better known as the Great Southern Desert, leagues of sand stretching from coastal hills to the Tyrian peaks. The harsh land was home of the Bazir. Bazir. Bazhir. And my mouth cannot say it. I know SHs are bad, but ZHs apparently are worse. Tribesmen, not all loyal to the king or to his governor, Lord Martin. The morning after Lord Martin's arrival, he conferred with the king and Duke Gareth for several hours. The king decided that Jonathan and the boys, who would soon to be knights, would take this chance to go see what the Bazir would like. The situation in the desert being as it was, the odds were good that each knight would fight against a Bazir at least once in his lifetime. The squires, under the guardianship of Sir Miles and Lord Martin, would ride south with the new troops. The pages would have their own long ride later in summer to the fief of Naxon in the east. After this decision was lunch was eaten. Duke Gareth and Lord Martin went to the fencing yards. Lord Martin had once been famed for the quality of his swordsmanship, and he and the Duke had already had one friendly match the evening before. Now the two men took their seats at the side of the yard, preparing to see what the older pages and younger squires looked like. "Let's see what they can do, Captain Askelaw," Duke Gareth instructed. Askelaw looked around the yard, his one eye twinkling viciously. "Merrin," Geoffrey bowed gracefully and picked up his padded cloth armor. Captain Askelaw was grinning as he pointed. "Turbon, you haven't done freestyle since your first time. Let's see you fall all over your own feet again." Alana felt herself turning hot and cold with terror. Someone was shoving her into practice padding into her hands. Numbly she put it on. Askelaw was right. She hadn't fought freestyle without each pass and move was already assigned to her by Askelaw, since that awful first bout was Satchel the year before. She had done the drill, endless repetition of the same movement or one-on-one plot fighting, in which each member of the team had to make certain set of movements dictated by Askelaw, while the other member used the counter movements Askelaw had given him. That sort of thing went back and forth between two duelers all afternoon. It certainly didn't prepare anyone for freestyle dueling. In addition, she had her night practice and morning practice, but she was always alone, and it was only a drill. Alana drew deep breaths, feeling faint. Once again, here were Duke Gareth and Captain Askelaw and Coram. It was clearing the boys out of the central dueling area, she slid the cloth helmet over her head and accepted the sword from Douglas. With surprise, she saw it was not the practice sword she had made, but lightning. Even lightning isn't going to help me now, she thought, stepping up to Mark and bowing to Joffrey. She drew her sword and assumed the guard position. "Begin," Askelaw ordered. Joffrey lunged forward to attack. Alana held her ground, blocking him with blocking his downsweeping sword with a force that jarred both their bodies. Following the great crescent moon drill, she disengaged and swirled lightning around in a half circle, cutting for Joffrey's side. The taller boy hurriedly blocked her and lunged back out of the way, bewilderment showing in his dreamy hazel eyes. Alana unthinkingly followed with the second stride of the crescent moon, swinging, landing back in the other direction, forcing Joffrey to block her again, rather than attack. It's always better to attack than to defend, Coram had told her. What? Oh, that was a cat moving. I felt something moving on the bed. Okay. I'm like barely paying attention. Stuff is going on behind me and it's starting to freak me out a little bit. It's fine. Okay. Where was I? It's always better to attack than to defend. Coram had told her when they talked about fencing late at night. You always don't win with defense. You're only hold the other fellow off or wear him down. Attack and have it done with. Alana attacked, feeling divorced from her arms as she moved through pass after pass. She saw an opening with her hand and took the chance to swing her sword into it. She never took the time to think about what she was doing. Instead, her muscles remembered the patterns of endless drills repeated over and over with a too heavy sword. Joffrey would move to attack or block, and Alana's arms and bodies remembered the move that always followed such an attack. Or such a block. Sweat poured into Alana's eyes as she shook it away, stumbling slightly. Joffrey took advantage of the brief moments of balance to lunging for a strike that would end the bout. Instead, Alana slid lightning around his sword like a metal snake, twisting her blade deftly. The sword flew from Joffrey's hand, and he was unable to grab for it. In the same move in which she disarmed him, the panting Alana pressed the tip of her sword at the cloth that covered the bridge of Joffrey's nose. The boy stepped back and knelt. "I yield," he said. He looked up at Alana and grinned. "Fought well, Alan. Very well fought." Sorry, there is, like, something in the back of my throat. Oh my gosh. It's gross. Sorry. She stared at him, gasping, feeling as if her lungs were on fire. And when she realized the sound in her ears was cheering, her friends, in fact all the pages and squires, were cheering for her. "Very good, Aram," Duke Gareth muttered to Captain Askelaw. "You've turned out matchless swordsmen." "It wasn't me, your grace," Askelaw growled, staring at the page he was fumbling at his armor ties. "'Twas the lad Turban, he did it all by himself." Yay, look at them praise her. It's good. It's fantastic. We're here for it. That night, Jonathan paid a visit to his uncle. "Sir," he said politely, "I have a favor to ask. It's about the trip to Persepolis? Persopolis. Persepolis. I think I'm going to go with Persepolis. Yeah, I have a favor to ask. It's about the trip to Persepolis and Thief Marin. Why is it doing that again? Whatever. The Duke of Naxton grinned. "You know you only have to command me, John." Jonathan chuckled. "But will you obey?" "Uncle, I'd like Alan to come with us. You said the pages will be going out to Naxton this summer, and he could stay behind them just to make up for it." The man looked at John's face. "This is very unusual, Jonathan." "I know," was the calm reply. "It's just that Alan spends more time with Gary and Rule and Alex and me than he does the pages. I think he'd have more fun if he went with us. And Sir Miles is going, and he's..." The prince stopped, and then went on when he saw the understanding look on his uncle's face. "Miles is a better father to Alan than Lord Trabond is." "Lord Child Neglect, yes, we know." "I know you're supposed to speak well of our elders, but Alan never complains, and we all got eyes and ears." The Duke took a nut from the bowl and cracked it. "Does Alan want to go to Persepolis?" "I don't know. Probably, since we're all going. If you mean does he know I'm asking you, no, he doesn't. Knowing Alan, he can't imagine I would ask such a favor for him." "Have you chosen a squire yet, Jonathan? In case you pass the ordeal." "I'm thinking about one," Jonathan replied calmly. "It isn't an easy decision." The man thought this over and nodded. "As long as the other boys aren't resentful, I don't see why he can't go with you." John smiled. "They won't resent it. Sometimes it seems he's just a small squire who takes a lot of interest in what the pages do." "Very perceptive of you. I will notify Alan, or will you notify Alan, or do you want me to?" You'd better tell him, Uncle. And thank you, from the bottom of my heart. Jonathan kissed the Duke's hand. He was half out the door when the older man's voice stopped him. Why does this mean so much to you, John? The prince turned. Because he's my friend. Because I always know where he stands and where I stand with him. Because I think he'd die for... Because I think he died for me, and I think I died for him. Is that enough? You're being pert, nephew, Gareth said with a mock sternness. Have Timon find Alan for me, then. Duke Gareth knew shocked Alana. She had never expected to be singled out. She had paid careful attention to all his instructions as to her duties during the trip. Since she was to be the only page in the company, she would wait on Lord Marin, Miles, and Jonathan, and run errands for the troop captain and the squires. She would continue her lessons with Miles as her instructor. Coram, too, was pleased with this honor, and his orders were as strict as the Duke's. She was to behave, no pranks, and was to be her watchword. Alana tried not to let the news get to her head, although she couldn't help but be excited. It surprised her that the other pages were glad for her rather than jealous. She didn't realize it, but they did not see her as a page, only, as Jonathan said, a very small squire. Just a little guy. I do love that, like, everyone's just like, nah, Alan's just a little guy. He's fine. Let him do what he needs. Oh. Where was I? Why is it doing that? I don't understand this sometimes. Like, sometimes it's normal like this, and then other times it just, like, it's cut off. Like, I don't know why this captioning does that. It doesn't always do it. It just does it sometimes. And I don't know how to fix that when it does that, so I'm sorry. I'm sorry my captioning thing is sucky. Alright, Alana tried not to let the... Okay, only this very small part. There you are. The night before they rode it, the boys and Miles were summoned to a meeting with Duke Roger. He gathered them in the great library, waiting for them to settle down comfortably before speaking. Alana tucked her down between the large Raoul and the equally large Gary, where she wouldn't attract notice, although the Duke looked both handsome and impressive, dressed in a sleek black velvet. A strangely designed chain with a sapphire pendant hung around his neck, accenting his eyes. Doubtless you lads know that why I'm taking you, he said with a smile. I dare say, or why I'm talking to you. I dare say no one's mentioned the Black City to you when they discussed the trip we're taking tomorrow. He shook his dark head. I don't think it's a good idea to take you all so close, but well, I'm overruled. Alana was blinking as lights bounced off the sapphire. The shimmering jewel was making her sleepy. Angry at herself, she gave her arm a strong pinch. That woke her up. The Black City is just barely within eye's view of Persepolis. The sorcerer went on. In fact, the Vizier have a room specially designed in the western hall of the Persepolis castle. It's called the Sunset Room. It's a rumor that the Vizier had it built so that they could always keep an eye on the Black City. As if sheep herders and desert men knew about such things, he sighed. You wouldn't be permitted near the city, of course. No one is. It's claimed there's a curse on it, and that no mortal being returns from the place alive. Especially if he's young. The Vizier's stories, again, told around campfires to frighten children, I have no doubt. The man paced around the room, a shadow panther with all eyes watching him. I'm certain the Vizier have created a wonderful monster for their bratlings to fear. I don't like Roger. He's mean. And I think kind of racist here. Hey, captioning software, can you work, like, correctly? There we go. I don't know if it actually... No, I didn't fix it at all. Woo! Look at that go to the side and then go back down and then probably go back to the side. Oh, now it's not even keep going because now it's like stuck. Okay. I don't know what's up with this. Whatever. We got like one chapter left. So I'm just going to keep going. If it breaks, it breaks. I'm sorry. It's mostly just for visuals because I don't have a camera or anything else to stick up here. That is not why I'm cautioning you. There is an evil power in the Black City, an immense power that dates far back in time. I do not know its nature. I have never been so foolhardy as to think myself strong enough to fight whatever waits here. Roger had stopped pacing, his eyes fixed on Jonathan. I don't need a seer's crystal to feel the evil in the place far away from Persepolis, just as a fisherman doesn't need a special glass to smell a hurricane approaching. If I dare not risk it, none of you, untrained, untried, would stand a chance. Don't venture near the Black City, under pain of death, and perhaps under pain of losing your souls. He smiled, his eyes locked with Jonathan's. I know when a sword is too heavy for me to lift. When Alana got to bed that night, she was as puzzled as she'd ever been. It looked more to her as if Roger had dared Jonathan to prove he was more a man than his cousin. To prove that he could brave the Black City that Roger feared. And yet, that couldn't have been true. Not even Roger would have the nerve and the coldness to send his young cousin to certain death, would he? Chapter 7. The Black City. Hi, Cat. Chance has joined us once again. Love him. It's a good cat. Baby cat. I enjoy having the cats with me. They're sweepies. They're sweepy babies. Okay. Ugh. Gonna lay back down for this one. Alright. The ride south was the longest and most demanding Alana had experienced. They were just a day away from Chorus when the countryside changed. The hills were rockier, the trees were sunken and twisted. The ground plants seemed to fight for each drop of water they took from the earth. The ground itself was brown and dry, torn with cracks. Lizards, snakes, and the occasional rabbit looked at the riders as if they were invaders. The sun felt 10 times hotter. By the end of the second day's ride, the cracked earth had turned to sand, and the hills into long dunes. They had reached the great southern desert. At night, Alana waited on Lord Marin, Miles, and the guard captain. She spent several hours of the day riding at Miles' side, learning about the lives and customs of the people of this land. Miles was an interesting teacher, and he knew much about the southern desert. Often, she caught Lord Marin glancing at the knight with respect in his hard eyes. Alana was not the only one taking lessons. Lord Martin lectured them all on survival in such bare land. Someday their lives might depend on knowing which plant stored water inside or how to find an oasis. The closer they came to Persepolis, the more Bazir. I was pronouncing it perfectly fine just a moment ago, but you know, the more Bazir they encountered. The desert people were hard riders and relentless figures. They hid their women in goatskin tents, but all men, women she sent watched the strangers through proud black eyes. Since they had already guessed Lord Martin didn't like his Bazir subjects, Alana went to Sir Miles. The Bazir are unusual, the knight admitted. Martin doesn't have a reason to resent them. I think he resents everyone, Alana muttered. Miles ignored that. You see, the old king is said to have conquered all the country as far south as the inland sea. Actually, what he conquered was the hill country to the east, and the coastline from Port Legan to the Tyran River. He never actually conquered this desert. It's far too big. Instead, he worked out treaties with some of the Bazir and slaughtered a few others. Now, some tribes call Roland their king, and they trade with the rest of the kingdom and try not to cause any trouble. Others are called a renegade. They won't accept Roland as king, and they make life difficult for those who use the southern road. The tribe that holds Persepolis is friendly with the king, and that's very important. Persepolis is the only city built by the Bazir. Elena thought about this for a moment. Why only one city? She asked. And why Persepolis, out in the middle of nowhere? There are 5 springs in Persepolis, Lord Martin said, harshly bringing his horse up behind him. As to why only one city, says they built it to guard the Black City. He snorted. Foolishness, if you ask me. Why build a city to guard another that you can scarcely see? He rode on back down the line. Alana squinted at Joffrey's father. I don't get it, she said. He doesn't like the Bazaar, but His Majesty made him overlord of the desert. Martin doesn't like the Bazaar, and they don't like him. But he is fair, Miles replied. He's fair if it kills him. The Bazaar knows that, so they deal with him. But no one else could have gotten the respect, even if it is grudgingly. Miles pushed back the hood of the Miles pushed back the hood of the burnous he had been worn since the second day out, looking intensely at her. Why so interested, Alan? She shrugged. No reason, I think. Excuse me. Lord Martin's waving. She wheeled Moonlight and trotted back down the lane. She didn't know herself why she was so interested in the desert men. It took a week to reach Persepolis. At last they could see its granite towers and walls rising before them. The city was built even stronger than a fortress, like Turbond. The weapons carried by its soldiers were well cared for and much used. People lined the streets to greet their returning lord and to stare at the youth who would one day be their king. While the bazaar kept to the back of the crowd, watching in silence. The city dwellers waved and called to the young nobles. Jonathan and his friends returned the greetings, as relaxed as if they do this every day. But Alana guided Moonlight to the spot between Miles and the guard captain and stayed there. Ugh. My throat is just, like, not happy with me. It's fine. It's like, I'll get through this, like, one chapter, and then, like, my throat will be happy with me for being quiet. Alright. What's the matter, youngling? The soldier chuckled. Shy? Alana blushed. He was right. But there was something else. Miles, she asked softly, did the Bazaar always stare so? The knight tugged at his beard thoughtfully. Actually, they try to ignore northerners. Perhaps it's Jonathan. Alana's nervous grip on the reins made her horse fidget. She tried to relax. The Bazaar were staring at her too. A formal banquet began in the castle late in the afternoon. Everyone wore their finest. They were toasts and long-winded speeches. Miles downed glass after glass of wine, and Alana hid in the corner unless summoned. There you are, Miles said, only a little unsteady on his feet. Are you jealous because Jonathan's the center of attention? He's the prince, lad. He'll be the center of attention for a long time. He drew a dark, well-dressed man forward. Here's someone who can tell you more about the Bazaar. Mukhatab. I do not know how to pronounce this word. I don't particularly want to butcher it. I'm going to continue to call this person Ali M. Because they will continue to call him by his full name. And I can't pronounce the last name, and I'm so sorry. This is Alan of Turbond. Aliam, this is the governor of... Aliam is the governor of Persepolis Castle. He's also Bazaar. You two talk. I'm off to a real bed at last. Miles tousled Alana's hair affectionately and left her alone with Aliam. The page and the man sized each other up carefully. Alana saw a tall Bazaar with walnut brown skin, glossy black hair, and trim black mustache. His large eyes were framed with long black lashes, and Alana was to learn he rarely opened them wide. He did so now when she shifted uncomfortably. There was power in his gaze. He half closed his eyes once more, smiling sleepily. You were not comfortable in the setting, he remarked quietly. Alana was never fond of personal remarks. She changed the subject. I like your vest, she announced. The vest was an elegant garment, red velvet trimmed with gold. He smiled, and she knew she had seen through her tactic. Sir Miles tells me you were curious about the Bazaar. Why? Surely a young man from the northern fief have little interest in the desert. A person can never tell where he'll end up, she said bluntly. I understand northerners. I don't understand the Bazaar. So, a cat's curiosity. Well, as a cat's love of privacy, is it permitted to ask why only one page travels with your group? Alana decided she liked this odd man. His Highness asked if I can come, especially. We're friends. He, I, Gary, and Rule, the two big squires, and Alex. The dark, secretive one, Alliam interrupted. He, too, is like a cat. But not one I would like to know. I'm very fond of cats. At least 3 live in my chambers. I like this man. He likes cats. But really, cats are good. Why? Why can I not move this further over? There we go. Can you just, like... Yeah? Yeah, you gonna work for me? No. No, it never does. I don't know how to get it to, like, not fuck up. Oh, coward. Say fuck like a normal thing. Thank you. Okay. Alex isn't secretive, precisely, Alana demurmured. He's just always been that way. Can you answer something for me? I know it's a little rude, but I've got to ask. The Bazaar smiled, and accepted 2 glasses filled with green liquor being passed by a footman. He gave one to Alana. Drink, he told her. You'll like it, by all means. Ask me your little rude question. Alana sipped the green stuff carefully. Tasted wonderful. I couldn't help but notice that Lord Mountain, he doesn't like the Bazaar. I mean, he's supposed to be fair and all. Alliam grinned, all right. You are right. He is painfully correct with us, and he cannot stand the sight of us. Go on. If that's so, why are you a Bazaar the governor of this castle? He turned his glass in his fingers. Your friend Miles said that you were intelligent. He did not say you were blunt. Alana blushed. Miles said that about me? She blushed deep. Her blush deepened. I never said I was tactful, she added. The post of governor of the castle of Persepolis goes by right to a Bazaar. Basir. I will never get this word correctly. I will continue to mispronounce it. And it'll be continually said for at least 3 more books, if not more? I don't think we get too many mentions of them in other books. Ali M. explained, Lord Martin cannot change that, although I know he has tried to. It is in the treaty with the old king. I think our people would rise up if the king in the north tried to change the custom. Over one castle position, I want to ask? What seems a little, well, extreme. There's a very good reason for that tradition, the Vizier explained. He looked out the window at the dimming sky. In fact, you and her friends can leave discreetly. I can show you something interesting. Within a few minutes, Alana and her friends had assembled in the back hallway. Jonathan was last to arrive. He had more difficulty sneaking away. If I hear one more noble tell me he'd like me to see a green city once before he dies, the prince murmured. Patients obviously weren't thinking, what's up? Alana performed hasty introductions, and the young men followed the governor down the hallway. I must admit to a surprise, Alliam was saying to Jonathan. I did not think Alana's message would lure you away from those so anxious to have you like them. You took the sword by the point, Jonathan replied, tweaking Alana's nose. If it were anyone else, they wouldn't have had 2 words to say to me. But I'm the prince, and I think every man in this room wanted something from me. Except Lord Martin, he added, nodding to Geoffrey. I didn't come here to have people treat me as if I was made of gold. They stopped before the wooden door. Alliam produced a brass key that had matched the lock and handle. This is the sunset room, he told them, unlocking the door. Only the governor of the castle holds the key. All 5 boys looked at each other. This was the room Duke Roger had mentioned, the room built to watch the Black City. Its design was totally different from any other room in the castle. The stone floors and walls had been carved with small, brightly colored tiles, which formed pictures, many of the Black City and of the Bazaar. Basir. I don't know how to say words. And my throat's starting to really hurt. My captioner's still broken. Ew. Okay. Alana peered closely at the walls, touching them with gentle fingers. It's very old, she said finally. Even we do not know how old it is, he replied. The door opened once again. Servants appeared with pillows and refreshments. The boys wandered all over from wall to wall and looked out to the west. There was no window to block the desert air. Only the posts supporting the ceiling separated the sunset room from the view. The room was set high in the Persepolis wall. Before them stretched the great southern desert, as far as their eye could see. It was a magnificent sight, painted red gold by a setting sun. My throat is really fucking killing me right now. Ugh. Sorry for the coughing. But, like, goodness. I have so many pages left. Oh, I'm crying. Okay. Give me, like, 2 seconds to, like, gross cough off camera or off microphone. Alright, my throat hurts less. Let's go. Where was I? Oh, they were looking at things. Okay, The only post supporting the ceiling separated the sunset room from the view. The room was set high in the Persepolis wall. Before them stretched the great desert, as far as their eye could see. It was a magnificent sight, painted red and gold by the setting sun. The view's only flaw was that it faced west, and the dying light shone directly in their eyes. Jonathan pointed. That small black speck, just where the sun is, that's the Black City? Eliam nodded. That is the Black City. The doom of the people for centuries. The doom of my people for centuries, ever since we can remember. Our memories reach beyond the days when your palace, Highness, was a palace for the old ones. Our young people have been called to the Black City. Our masters lived here, the nameless ones. They stole our souls and gave us farms and cattle. We swore never to farm again. Legends say we stopped... Why is there cat hair in my mouth again? Grody. Legends say that we stopped there when we came north, over the inland sea. The nameless ones welcome us and ask us to share their land and farm their crops. All this, the legend says, was green and fertile. Ali's hand swept over the leagues of empty sand. When we saw that we were stealing, that they were stealing our spirits, we rebelled. We burned them and their city, and all the land turned to dust. After we left, never to return, we built Persepolis so we might watch the city always. How can you burn them out if they were so powerful? Gary wanted to know. They feared fire above all things, the man replied. Their spirit linger in the city, and they cannot pass the circle of fire we placed around their walls. You said they call your young people, Alex said. What do you mean? The man sighed. Sometimes a youth or a maiden will awaken at night and ride to the city. If they are stopped, they rave and scream and refuse their food, talking only of the city and the gods who wish them to come there. Or if we do not let them go, they will starve themselves to death. And if they go, they don't come back, Jonathan said quietly. Isn't it better to let them go? Raoul asked. Maybe it isn't the city at all. Well, your life as well, it's harsh. Maybe they really go into other cities and live somewhere else. We would like to think so, the governor said. The governor of the castle replied. But we have trained our young to be honest. His eyes were on Alana as he said this, and she squirmed. Those who leave us for the cities go with their family's blessings or curses, but they always tell us that is where they go. But those who want the Black City speak only of it, and they cannot lie about it if they tried. It seems cruel to me to tie them up and keep them, Raoul yawned, settling into a pillow and pouring himself a glass of wine. To the Bazir, even death by starvation is better than the fate we think awaits them there. Aliam said. We have another legend. The Bazir have many legends. That says one day we will be free of the call of the city. It says 2 gods. The Night One and the Burning Brightly One will go into the city and battle with the immortals there. I do not know how true that may be. The Bazaar smiled. Some, like Lord Martin, said that many legends say that we possess little else. God, I cannot read. Some, like Lord Martin, say we have many legends because we possess little else. He's probably right. Your people seem old and wise, Jonathan said. He was standing by the window, watching the last pool of sun disappear into the desert. It's too bad no one has written history of the Vizier. Alliam looked at him, his eyes open wide, fixing Jonathan with a strangely intent stare. Are you interested in such things, Highness? Jonathan returned that powerful look evenly. I have to be, he said. The Bazaar will be my people, too, someday. Alliam bowed low. I will see if such a history can be found, or written. I look forward to reading it, the prince replied. He followed his friends out into the hall. What a story, Raoul grinned. Ghouls and ghosts. I wonder what the truth is. The mosaics on the walls hinted that the truth was pretty frightening, Alex told him. Those mosaics were done by the Vizier, Gary pointed. Come on, it's past bedtime. They made their way to their rooms, not noticing that Alan and John lingered behind. I wonder who they really were, Alana mused. The nameless ones. John's voice was casual. An old enemy, made bigger to scare the young ones, I guess. It's a sensible idea. There are probably lots of places in those rooms where a child could get lost. Good night, Alan. She glanced sharply at him. First, he was very interested in the Bazaar. Now he was saying their legends were old stories to scare the children. That wasn't like Jonathan. The carefully innocent look on his face wasn't like Jonathan either. Good night, she murmured, turning into her chamber. No one was waiting for her. Coram being back at the palace, if anyone had thought Alan might get into more trouble than usual without his eagle-eyed servant to watch him, no one had mentioned it. Alana blew the lamp out and undressed in the dark, still wondering about Jonathan's turnabout behavior. She awakened suddenly, before dawn. Every nerve in her body quivered, as if she were to take a test in the practice yards. She dressed swiftly, binding herself tight, putting a loose blue shirt over her head. She tucked the shirt into her breeches and then struggled into riding boots over her stockinged feet. Hands trembling, she buckled lightning and her daggers to her side. She didn't know why she was in such a hurry, but she didn't stop to think about it either. At last she was ready, and slid out into the hall. A light burned in Jonathan's room. Suddenly it went out. His door opened. Alana tucked into a dark niche, waited as the prince slipped into the hall, fully dressed. You must be crazy, she hissed as he closed his door. His eyes searched until he found her in the shadows. His teeth flashed into a grin. Are you coming? I'm going with or without you. She followed, her well-used boots padding like cat feet on the floor. No, no one was awake at the stables. Quickly, they saddled their horses, a gold coin bought for the cooperation of a large vizier that stationed at the city gate. Together they rode swiftly to the west. There was no sand in the Black City, no dust, nothing to show that centuries had passed since people lived there. The streets were hard, black, and bare, shining in the sun. The alien buildings, beautiful and carefully carved, rose without break from the rocks of the streets. If any tower was not part of the massive black beneath their feet, they did not find it. The city rose like a cluster of needles stabbing to the sky. It's very nice, Alana said with approval when they were just inside the gate. Now let's go back. She remembered suddenly the vision that she had seen of the Black City, not once, but twice. Was she meant to be here? Well, if that's the case, she was scared. You can go, her friend replied, running a hand along the carving. I'm looking around some more. Alana shrugged and followed, her hand on Lightning's hilt. Maybe this was what she had to do. They explored silently, peering into the echoing buildings, while the noon sun beat over their heads. The great towers were bare of everything, furniture, cloth, glass, except the carvings that covered the entire city. Alana examined these carvings with care. They showed strange animals and stranger people, men with heads of lions, women with bird wings, great cats with human faces. Alana had never seen anything like it. Now that she had, she wished she hadn't. Oh, yay, we're towards the end of this book. I don't see bodies or skeletons, Jonathan whispered. Those young Vizier people probably just took off for the cities. Then why are you whispering? Her voice was equally soft. The prince looked around, searching windows and doorways. I'm not sure. Yes, I am. This place is evil. Whether it has or has... whatever has or hasn't been here, the city's still evil, though, through and through. I'm glad we left the horses outside, was her only answer, as she ventured deeper and deeper into the city. She kept close watch on the doors and windows around them. They turned a sharp corner in the city's central square lay before them. It was a wide, flat reach of stone, carefully polished, and yet reflecting no light from its surface. Oh, Jesus. Alana decided it was like staring into a huge pit covered with glass. It only took her nerve to step onto it. But step she did. The building was in the center of a square, recalled to her. Its sides were columns of plain black stone. Roof separated itself from the columns with a border of carvings covered with gold. Topping a long rise of the stairs, great doors beckoned. She and Jonathan climbed up to the doors, feeling smaller and smaller as they climbed. The door stood open and waiting. Like the stone of the city, the black wood of the doors was carved with exotic pictures. The edge of the carvings were lined with gold. When they reached the doors, lightning began humming, its hilt trembling in Alana's hand. "Jonathan, my sword," she stammers. "Hmm?" The prince was eyeing the doors. "I don't think we should go in there. My sword it's humming." Jonathan shook his head. "I'm gonna find out what's going on." He stepped inside the temple. Lighten tightened her grip on the sword hilt, and followed. "You know I can't let you come in here by yourself," she snapped as she caught up with him. Jonathan grinned. "Of course. Why did you think I asked Uncle to let you come?" "You planned this all along?" she accused. "I hate mysteries, and this place has been one for years. But I knew you'd have the guts to come with me. But Gary, Alex, Raoul," she protested, they would have grumbled all the way here and then knocked me over the head when I tried to enter the city. I knew you'd come and keep quiet." "John, you're mean." Really? You're just gonna keep doing that thing? I don't know how to get to stop. I don't even know what starts it. I can do this. Oh. Oh, hello. Hello, hello. Uh-oh. Oh, no, that's not what I pressed. It doesn't know what I'm pressing. I'm trying to clear the transcript, see if that helps. It might not. Alright. That's because I'm the one with insanity in my... That's because I'm the one with insanity in my family, she grumbled. She's actually not wrong on that. In one of Becca's books, we meet her ancestor, and he's definitely insane. The poor people there. Actually, I should clarify here. He's a corrupt cop who's being blackmailed by the rogue of the city, and he tries to have Becca killed. It's a fun time. I really shouldn't talk more about Becca's books, because I actually don't want to spoil them, but that one's not hard to figure out from the beginning when you meet the guy. So, you can have that one. Jonathan laughed, and the sound was eaten up by the air inside the temple. They walked forward, slowly, their hands on their sword hilts. There were no windows or torches, but weird yellow-green lights came from everywhere. The walls were carved from a glassy stone, catching the light and making it ripple along their surfaces. At the end of the chambers was a large black block of dark stuff that swallowed the light without reflecting it. "The altar," John whispered. The light moving in the building waved across the room. When the eyes of the two humans cleared, 10 men and women were standing in front of the altar. Even the smallest of the women was taller than Duke Gareth. They were all so beautiful that it hurt to look at them for very long. Their power flashed and rippled along their bodies, dancing in a dance of green light. There we go. It has been so long. The woman in red said with a sigh. "And they're so small." One woman stretched a hand out to them. Her fingernails were long and red like claws. "Feel the life in them." Ylira? Ylira? Ylira, it's a flame. These two will be enough for all of us. Alana edged closer to Jonathan's side. Lightning was trembling in her grip. "This was your idea," she muttered. "Who are you?" Jonathan demanded of the strangers. His voice was clear and calm. He showed no sign of fear. "They speak," the man being sneered. "And look at the little one. It'll hit us with its sword." The beings, the nameless ones, laughed. Alana shivered at the cruelty in the sound. The largest of the men waved a careless hand. He was broad-shouldered and black-bearded, a giant among even these creatures. "Your mortal weapons will not hurt us," he warned. "We are the Lysander. We are mortal. Our flesh is not like yours." "Can't keep us here," Jonathan replied. "We are hungry," the clawed woman's eyes glinted. "We have not fed in one of yours for years. The goat herders are too good at keeping their young from us." The woman, whose hair was whiter than snow, purred. "I think his father, the king, will hunt for them and destroy us." Or he thinks... Okay, a woman with hair whiter than snow purred. "He thinks his father, the king, will hunt for them and destroy us." They laughed. Alana wanted to put her hands over her ears and shout out the dreadful sound. But she forced herself to remain still, moving her feet so that she would be totally balanced when the attack came. The black-bearded one smiled. "I am Yelan, chief of the Lysander. I have fed on hundreds of your mortal lives. Let your father bring his armies. I will feed on their souls, and we will be strong. We will break the curse of fire the Vizier put on this place." Jonathan took a deep breath. "I don't need my father's soldiers. I'm going to leave here, and you're not going to keep me." "Listen to the princeling," mocked the red-clawed woman. "How do you roar, young lion? Whew! Don't you dare speak to him," Alana cried, and she drew lightning in a swift moment. The crystal on the hilt blazed out, throwing a harsh light into the darkness around them. The Lysander shrank back against the altar, trying to keep the light from their eyes. "Oh, so you came armed with their weapons," Yelan said. "But can you use them?" "Yolanda," said Yolera. All their names start with Y. The woman in red. "I cannot see into this one's mind. It's hiding something. Where did you get that sword?" she snapped, staring at Alana. "None of your business," Alana replied, focusing on the red-ground being. For a second, she felt a touch in her mind, like claws raking through her head. She yelled. Lightning flashed, and the woman with claws, Yolanda, collapsed against the altar. She was gasping for breath. "Don't give them an opening like that again," Alana warned. Already the air around him was shimmering with blue light. Alana brought up her own shield of violet magic, keeping lightning outside just in case. "I didn't plan to give them that one," Alana muttered. Yolanda had gotten her breath back. Suddenly she was laughing, and the others watched. "It's all in all my centuries," she finally gasped. "I have not known such a jest. Young lion, and see your companion for what she really is." "She?" Jonathan whispered. Before Alana could bring Lightning's crystal up, power from Yolanda and Yelan smashed into her defenses, breaking through. She doubled over in pain, and it was over as swiftly as it began. With one difference. All her clothes were gone, and all she wore was her belt and her scabbard. The Lysander were laughing with Yolanda. A girl! And his boy companion was a girl. One of them, called Ylera, laughed scornfully as Alana tried to cover herself with her hands. A girl who hopes to protect her prince. A jest indeed. Alana held Lightning's crystal, letting it burn into their eyes. The crystal dimmed. She shouted, "Maybe a girl, but I can defend or attack as well as any boy." Alana literally said, "Don't matter what I am, I can kick your ass." As she should, though. She looked at Jonathan. Her friend was openly staring. "Highness," she whispered, blushing a deep red eye. He pulled off his tunic and handed it to her. "Later, just who are you?" She pulled the tunic on. John was so tall that his tunic covered her thighs. A small being, but she was appreciated just now. "Alana of Turbond, Highness." Yelan's booming voice pulled their attention back to their enemies. "Separate them." Instinctually, Alana gripped Jonathan's hand. Sapphire and amethyst power collected at their intertwined fingers. "A wall of power," Jonathan hissed. "What's the spell?" Alana stared at the verses. John's voice joined Alana started the verse as John's voice joins hers, the words thundering in a great chamber. Slowly, a wall of blue-violet light rose between them and the Lysander. The immortals covered their eyes, unable to look at for long. They retreated. You defy us, Yolande cried. Pay the price, mortals. Tearing pain shot through their joined hands. Don't let them part us, John said. He held on so tightly that Alana's bones creaked. She ignored the pain, keeping her mind on the wall. The Lysander came closer, their bodies shimmering with yellow-green magic. Furious, they threw bolts of power at their prey. John and Alana concentrating, bringing up all their will to keep their defenses strong. The wall stood. Two immortals touched it and screamed. They vanished in a flash. So you can die, Alana taunted. You can feel pain. Whew, just how long do you think she'll last? Ylira asked Jonathan softly. Another few moments? Not even that? She is a girl. She is weak. She will give away, and where will you be? It's in the same small voice that taunted Alana from within whenever she faced a taller, stronger opponent. You think so? She shouted furiously. Then try this on for size. As a slender thread of violet magic snakes through the wall. Wrapping itself around Ylira's throat and tightening. The immortal did not even have a chance to scream before she fell to the ground and vanished. Alana didn't have time to gloat. 3 women joined hands to form a deadly-looking triangle. Power collected at the center of their formation in a small, evil ball. Jonathan, Alana whispered. This kind of magic was beyond her, and she knew Jonathan had spent more time studying books of sorcery than she had. Jonathan spoke, using words that she had never heard before. Alana felt her own magic flying into her friend's body. Slowly the prince reached through the wall, magic lanced from his fingertips, shattering the triangle. Alana blinked, trying to clear her eyes of the blaze that must have been the 3 at Lysander. 5 remained. The red-headed woman and the brunette with hungry eyes screamed and threw themselves at the wall. They blazed and vanished. The others drew back. Alana remembered something. John. Fire? She hissed. Of course, she whispered. Duke Roger had not taught them spell, but Duke Gareth had. The pages had been camping in the royal forest before that night, most of them had not known Duke Gareth had possessed the gift. It's the first spell any Naxon learns if he has the gift, the Duke explained. Put away that flint away, Alex, I'll show you. Together, Alana and Jonathan whispered the same spell that Duke Gareth had taught them, changing some words to make their meaning. Bright flame, light flame, around the Lysander burned brighter. Light the flame, bright the flame, burn Lysander in Mithras' name. Yolande, cried one of the 2 male Lysanders remaining. Fire roared up outside the wall, reaching with eager fingers for the one who cried out. He screamed and disappeared, the fire vanishing with him. Only 2 remained of the Lysander, Yolande and Yolanda. Alana gulped. These 2 had joined hands, and the power gathered around him. A calf! Yolande cried. The wall vanished as if it had never been. The others were weak and greedy, Yolande sneered. We are not. We are the first, Yolande said. We have been here before the others, and we shall remain. Who are you? Jonathan asked, trying to catch his breath. Alana wiped the sweat beads from her face on her sleeve. She was tired, so tired her bones ached. We are the gods and the children of gods. Shoot, the woman said. We were here before your old ones, and we laughed when their cities fell. Alana felt a return of her old spirit. A likely story, she said with a sniff. Gods don't die. You do. You think you know all, mortal. You know nothing. Even immortals die when they are weakened. Yolanda and I are the strongest. You will not weaken us. You give a lot of big talk, Alana retorted, sorry. I believe in deeds, not words. Jonathan's voice was even and strong. Your time is past. You no longer belong here. Yolande and Yolanda raised their linked hands, chanting in a language that made the 2 humans shudder. Outside, thunder crashed. The weird glow that lighted the temple vanished. The only light came from their magics. Jonathan? Alana whispered. He looked down at her. We're not beaten yet. Alana, can you become what you were the night you saved me from the fever? What you brought me back from death? I don't know, she whispered, eyeing the Lysander. You have to. And you must take me with you, otherwise... Jonathan didn't have to elaborate. The light of the immortal's magic was getting stronger. Alana looked at their linked hands, shining with the blue-violet of their combined gifts. Already she was She was falling out of herself into that light. She could feel Jonathan with her. Her eyes burned with their magic. Burned as their magic grew brighter and formed a globe around him. Goddess, she whispered in her woman's voice. Great mother. Dark lady, a man added softly. Open the way for us. She didn't really hear. Did she really hear Jonathan command? She wasn't sure. Needle-sharp bolts of magic were lancing in their interlocked hands. Pain shot through their physical shells. Yolanda and Yolanda stood before them in a wheel of yellow-green power. Fire streamed from them and broke on their newly formed globe of magic that held the bodies of John and Alana. For a second time in her life, Alana heard that female voice, the one that made her scream with pain. This time she didn't scream. She was too busy concentrating on keeping the globe of power in one piece. The voice echoed in her mind, place your trust in the sword and fight. Alana had dropped lightning during the earlier fight. Now the sword jumped into her free hand, the crystal blazing. She can feel it trembling as she gripped the hold. Just don't let go of me, Jonathan cautioned. I won't. Holding Jonathan fast, she stepped forward. Lightning sang in her hand. A black, two-edged blade appeared in Yolanda's free hand. Like Jonathan, Yolanda didn't let go of her companion. She stayed close, keeping step behind him. Yolanda brought his sword down in a furious arc. Alana blocked it swiftly, her arm muscles screaming as she stopped the down-sweeping blade. Lightning blazed and miraculously did not break. The dark sword drank in lightning's fires as Yolanda backed away. His big chest was heaving, and there was a sweat on his face. Alana circled him, her eyes relieving his sword. Jonathan squeezed her hand reassuringly. She felt better now. This is what she had trained for. She had turned all her attention to the swords, letting Jonathan control her sorcery. Yolanda, suddenly wary of her, lanced at her in a series of rapid thrusts. Alana stopped each of them, feeling her confidence grow each time she stopped the Ysander. Immortal he might be, swordsman he was not. Jonathan was speaking softly, uttering words that she paid no attention to. The fire surrounded him, and Alana blazed. Oh, God, my throat. Alright, Alana blazed, and the girl yelled with triumph. She swung lightning up and around in a complex move that brought the sword together, hilt to hilt. Yolana's sword shattered with impact. Alana slashed at the immortal's linked hands. A globe of yellow-green light exploded, and the two Ysanders screamed with rage and fear. Alana uttered one word of the command, throwing the last reserves of gripped into the spell. Blue-violet light flooded over the immortals. They flare up like a giant torch as everything went black. Alana and John woke on the floor of the chamber. The Ysander had vanished. Only a scorch mark on the perfect floor remained of Yolanda and Yolanda. Near Alana was lightning. The sword's tip blackened. Grab some water before I read the next couple pages. Woo! We're doing good. Are you alright? Jonathan asked wearily. He pulled himself to his feet. Alana couldn't swallow a tiny moan. Every muscle screamed in pain. I'm smarting a little, she admitted. How about you? Smarting is an understatement. Come on, I want to get away from here before we try to rest. Jonathan stumbled over her sword and picked it up. It's still warm, he said with awe. Alana rose somehow. She felt as if someone had pounded her with hammers. Think there are any more of them? She accepted her sword and sheathed it carefully. The prince shook his head. I'd say we've seen the last of the Ysander. Come, we'll lean on each other. They made it somehow to the city wall, where moonlight and darkness waited patiently for them. Jonathan felt his saddle, and then the saddle blanket. They're wet, he said. It's been raining out here. Alana pulled herself onto her mare's back with her last bit of strength. She had no wish to comment. Jonathan headed east to the small oasis that they knew was nearer to the Black City than Persepolis. Alana wasn't about to argue that they were going the wrong way. Sorry. The oasis was closer than home, and that all she wanted to do was lie down. The horses, contentedly cropped the grass, while their owners bathed with aching faces and hands with the cool water. Jonathan finally leaned back against the palm tree. I wish I thought to bring food. Alana lay flat on the grass nearby. I'm happy just to be alive. They rested in silence for a while, breathing the fresh desert air deeply. They watched the sunset in the pool. They watched the sunset in pools of rose and orange, thinking they had never seen a lovelier sunset. Darkness came and 1,000 stars. Moonrise soon, Alana said. We should try for Persepolis then. We'd never make it. Jonathan's quiet voice came from the shadows. We're in trouble as it is. Spending the night won't make it any worse. There was a long silence once again. Finally, Alana said, I suppose you'd like an explanation. Yes, she sighed. It's a long story. We have time, he said comfortably. I don't intend to move until I hear it. You must admit I've had a shock. I'm sorry, she said humbly. I haven't wanted to lie to you. I would hope so. You're the worst liar I've ever met. He thought back to the moment and then added, or the best. Now I'm all confused. What about your twin? He didn't want to be a knight, she replied simply. He wants to be a great sorcerer, she said. Today it was more of Tom's sort of thing than mine. Father was always going to send me to the convent and Tom to the palace, and I didn't want to learn to be a lady. Jonathan's chuckle gave her courage. Old Maud knew. She said it was right, and well, I talked Coram around. Jonathan knew Coram well. How? He asked curiously. I threatened to make him see things that weren't there. He doesn't like that. John chuckled again, imagining Coram seeing visions. And your father? He doesn't care about Tom or me, she said flatly. I want to be a warrior maiden and do great deeds. Tom likes sorcery, and father hates it. The only way we could get what we wanted was to lie. I had to pretend to be a boy. I was always better at the fighting arts than Tom anyway. Whose idea was it to make the switch? Mine, she admitted truthfully. Or ruefully. Either or. Tom might have thought of it, but he's the careful one. I knew what I wanted, and I didn't mind taking a risk or two, she sighed. I enjoy the life. You could have been caught at a time. You could have been a weakling. Roger could have found you out. Oh, there's been warrior maids before. They weren't weak, and, well, I think my gift protects me from Duke Roger. I'm not sure, but I think so. And you can't say I haven't proved myself. Of course you have. Often you do better than most of us. Oh, she picks at the grass. I had to. Alana, it's a pretty name, he said thoughtfully. Tom, Maud, Coram, who else knows? George and his mother. You trusted George? He can be trusted, she said hotly. Besides, I needed help once, and I knew he'd give it to me anyway. I knew he'd never give me away. Oh, and I knew he'd never give me away, meaning her secret. Okay, he's my friend, John. You called me John. You saved my life back there. You saved mine. We wouldn't have made it out without each other. I knew I was right by taking you. She lay silent for a while, listening to the sound of the night. At last she gathered the courage. What are you going to do about me? His voice was surprised. Do? I'm not doing anything. As far as I'm concerned, you earned a right for your shield a long time ago. She heard him moving. No one will learn your secret from me, Alana. Her chin trembled. Her tears stung her eyes. Thank you, Your Highness. He knelt beside her. I thought you were calling me John. Alana, you're crying. It's been such an awful day, she sobbed. Hesitantly, the young man put his arms around her and drew her against him. And now you're being so kind. She wept into his shirt. Not kind, he told her. Grateful, admiring. You're getting my shirt wet. She laughed and straightened, wiping her eyes. I'm sorry, John, but I haven't done that for a long time. I believe it, he said, sitting back on his heels. I don't think you cried even when Rellin was beating you, and you were just a little girl. Mithras, I'm so confused. He whistled. Gods, that's why you never went swimming. All the times you've seen us naked. Me naked. She kept his own. John, you start to act like that, and I'm finished. We've got to go on treating me as like I'm any other boy, or I'm through. He sat beside her. What insanity! But you're right. She could feel his eyes on her face, although it was too dark to see him clearly. How do you plan to be a warrior man if no one knows you're a girl? I'm going to tell everyone on my 18th birthday. And what will you do after that? She could see him grin. Mithras, Uncle will have fits. She relaxed. I'm going to travel and do great deeds. He ruffled her hair. I believe you. And don't forget your friends when you're a legend. She laughed. You'll be more famous than me. You'll be king one day. And I'll have all my friends. And I'll need all my friends. And you will serve me when you are doing great. And will you serve me when you're doing great deeds? I am your vassal, she says seriously. And I'll never forget that. Excellent, he said with a slight moan. Or he rose with a slight moan. Sorry. Jesus, I cannot read. I want to keep one of the best fencers at court on my side. I'm going to bathe. Don't watch. She grinned. I never watch. She turned her back as he walked down the water. Dreamily, she stared into the sky, listening to John yelp as he splashed chilly water over his aching body. His voice startled as he spoke. You're only quiet when you're worried about something. What's bothering you? 2 things, she admitted. Lysander. We have no way of knowing that they're gone for good, or that we got all of them. I know we did, Jonathan replied. Sometimes a man has to rely on his instincts, and the Lysander are gone forever. Doesn't it seem, well, strange that a boy and a girl were able to destroy the Bazir demons? You're forgetting, he replied gently. We had help. Even the bizarre demons couldn't stand against the gods. I suppose so, she said doubtfully. I know so. Jonathan climbed from the pool and hurried into his clothes. Your turn, and keep talking. It'll frighten any animals away. Don't you watch, she warned as she stripped and plunged into the chilly water. Jonathan chuckled. Not me. You're too skinny and too good with a sword. And there are 2 things that are bothering. And you said there were 2 things that are bothering you. What's the other one? Alana shook soggy hair from her eyes, trying to decide how she could best say what she was thinking. She was about to tread on various dangerous ground. Does it strike you as odd the way Duke Roger warned us to stay away from the Black City? She climbed out of the oasis and pulled an overlarge tunic over once more. You mean the way he practically dared us? Well, me to come here. Alana sat beside him, trying to see her friend's face in the desert night. You knew, she whispered, horrified. You knew you knew Duke Roger was sending you to almost certain death. His grip on her arm was painful. Now that I do not believe, he said sternly. Roger is my only cousin, and one of my best friends. He taught me to ride. He would never do a thing you're suggesting, Alana. Never. He sent me here because he thought I might have a chance to rid Torell of Scrooge. And I did, with your help. He must have known I'd take you with me. I'm sure by now he has the whole story of what happened the night I had the sweating fever. He did Torell a favor, and he did me a favor. People will think twice before they take on the prince or a king who can defeat demons. Oh, John, you're a moron. You're a complete and stupid idiot. Then why didn't he do it himself, she asked. Why risk the only heir to the throne? Perhaps he doesn't have the other powers helping him. They seem to be helping us. And that's enough for his discussion. And I would trust Roger with my life and with yours. No, John. If he had never wanted the throne, he could have had it. If he had ever wanted the throne, he could have had it all these years past. So let's change the subject, right? There are too many perhapses and all that, Alana thought rebelliously. But she did as she was told. After all, John was older, wiser, and better acquainted with Duke Roger. But she still thought the Duke of Gaunt never expected them to return from the Black City. They both found comfortable spots beneath the same tree, stretching out for a night's sleep. Alana was gazing at a distant outline of the Black City when John said, Alana, perhaps you'll help me with the decision I have to make. Relief made her smile. At least he wasn't angry, because what he said about his cousin. I can try. What with Gary and Alex and Roll becoming knights at the same time I do, it makes competition for squires pretty fierce. So I've noticed, she said dryly. He chuckled. Who do you think I should pick? Alana sat up on her elbows. A week ago she would have told him to pick Geoffrey or Douglas. But she had not been to the Black City then. She had not proved to the Lysander that a girl could be one of the worst enemies that they had ever faced. But what if she had not gone to the Black City? Duke Gareth had mentioned, with a deal more practice, that she had become one of the finest swordsmen at court. In archery, she hit the target every single time. The masters who taught her tactics and logic said she was sometimes brilliant. Miles said she was far more intelligent than many adults. She had bested Rowland of Malin, and in some strange way, she had won her sword. All at once, she felt different inside her own skin. Me, she said at last. You should pick me. There we go. Alana, for once, overcoming her crippling imposter syndrome. We love to see it. But you're a girl. It was impossible to tell what he was thinking. So, she demanded. Even Captain Athcloth says I'll be a swordsman yet, and I'm good as an archer as Alex, and he's a boy, and I'm a squire, and I'm a better tracker than Rule. And have I ever failed you? Back there, when you had the fever. I'm glad you agree with my reasons, he interrupted calmly. I told Father you'd probably accept. Alana swallowed her. Before we left, I told him I wanted you as my squire. He didn't seem very surprised. Jonathan wiggled, trying to find a softer spot on the ground. But, Alana stuttered. Isn't it different now that you know that you're a girl? No, not in the way you mean. Girl, boy, or dancing bear, you're the finest page, the finest squire to be at court. He chuckled. I almost had to fight Gary for you. He said it wasn't fair, me getting the best because I'm the prince. He looked at her. Alana of Turbond, I will be honored if you will serve as my squire. Alana kissed his hand, blinking back tears. My life and my sword are yours, Highness. He spoiled the dignity of the moment by ruffling her hair. Now get some sleep. He settled back and closed his eyes. You know, he murmured, Mother, I'd rather face old Yolan again than Lord Martin in a temper. I'll blame it all on you, she replied. See if I don't. He dozed off quickly. Alana lay awake a little while longer, watching the dark towers of the Black City in the distance. If there were any more Ysandra about, no, she was too tired to care. She wished she had John's faith in Duke Roger, but she knew she wasn't going to get it. Still, she could figure out the Duke of Kent later. And as John said, there was a morning and Lord Martin to face, and it was time to sleep. And now it says the beginning. So that was book 1. I hope you all enjoyed it. It took us way too long to get through that. Hopefully I'll remember to start book 2 next week. Yes, thank you for joining me. Thank you for watching this. For most people who watch these things afterwards, thank you for watching them at all. I appreciate it. If this is the first one you've watched, I've done several other of these before. You can find them on Twitch or my YouTube, which I'm sure I have a link to somewhere. I'm awful at this whole, being on the internet thing. Okay? Anyway, good night. My throat hurts. Stop my caption software. Yay. Good night, everyone.